Museum Digit
2020.
A Magyar Nemzeti Múzeum online
virtuális konferenciája.
Hi everyone, it's Livio Carrer, and with me it's Michelangela, Giacomo. We are two of the curators here in M9. Unfortunately, the museum is still closed for the COVID situation, as you know. This is M9, but M9 is not just a museum, it's more than the historical museum. It's 1 hectare, you can see up to the building you see down there. It's 1 hectare of urban regeneration. It's a big project for the city of Mestre, so the mainland part of Venice, the more depressed part of the city. And we're gonna speak about all the process of building, setting up the collection here in M9, starting from the idea of the museum, the first concept made by the project manager Guido Guerzoni, and then we go deeply inside all the phases we pass through to set up M9, from the phase of working with the curator of more than 20 curators we worked with, and then the research of the materials used to create the collection, and then we're gonna speak more about the problem occurred in this phase we faced inside M9. We're gonna speak inside the museum, inside our auditorium, so you can see more than one space of M9. So we moved inside the museum. We are in the main building, inside the auditorium, which is designed as a whole project by Sauerbruch Hutton. Sauerbruch Hutton is a Berlin-based studio made by two architects, Luisa Hutton and Matthias Sauerbruch. They won an international competition held by the Venezia Foundation, which is the owner of M9, the commissioner of this whole project. It's a private project because the Venezia Foundation is a bank foundation. It's important to say this museum, so it's private and not public here in Italy. What you see here in the first slide, it's the pattern, the color pattern of the tiles which cover the M9 buildings. These colors are not casual, they come from the facade. These are the main colors you can find in the facade of the Venezia building. So they decided to use these colors in order to make the new buildings more clear and more in accordance with the context, the architectural context of Venice and Mestre. We call the presentation a unique design experience for many reasons. These are a panoramic view of the hectare we show from downstairs before. On the right, it's the main building. Up on the left, it's a former convent of the 16th century, which also part of M9. In this part of the hectare of the district, we have some small shops because part of our income comes from renting the space, commercial space. And down here on the left are our office. So let's speak about the designing process, which lasts for more than 10 years, because the first concept of M9, it's before the 2010, so when starts the architectural context. And this is the mission of M9, so knowing the 20th century to understand the present and shape the future. So the museum, it's about the 20th century Italian history, the big transformation occurred in Italy in the last century, but we don't speak just about the past. Our collection is useful to better understand the present, and so in order to not have fear of the future. We divided, working with more than 20 curators, the 20th century into 8 sections. So we focus not just about the political issues of the 20th century. The fil rouge is not the wars, the fascist time. The museum, it's more focused on the material culture. So you have society, demographic, the consumption habits and lifestyle, science and technology related to the living of the Italians, how changed the living of the Italians in the 20th century. We later on showing some exhibit about this point, or this section. The economy, of course, we have also landscape, transformation of urban habits, then the politics, so you see the politics is one of the 8 sections. And then we have education and school, language and information. And then the last section is about the Italian identity. So we can say about the Italian culture as a whole. We use a lot of technology. M9, it's characterized for the multimedial teams, but it's important to say in first step that the digital not drive the content, but it's inverted. So it's the content which drives, we use the technology to enhance the narrative, to enhance the path of exhibit. So we have immersive interactive routes, digital content, digital signals, motion detection and tracking. We use a lot of navigation into the environments, a lot of projection, touch screen. We have audio focusing with this speaker, which creates a sort of cone under the visitor. There's a lot of interactive installation. We use technology to help people to better understand the content we would like to concentrate inside the collection. Don't fear of this graphic. This graphic just speaks about the process of storytelling here in M9. At the center, you have M9, and then you can see all the points starting from the 8th section. We create connection among all the teams, all the historical teams we have inside here M9, and this graphics helps even to understand that we made a lot of visitor analysis. So we try to create any exhibit more focused for the age of the visitors. That's important to say. We have a crowd design process. These are the 5 multimedia and interaction studio we worked with for the collection. ... Carmachina, Clonework, NEMA FX, and Carraro Lab are all Italian studio. We select with a competition also in this case, and they have different styles. That is important to say. We decided to work with different studio, which was a problem from some point of view, but this also helps us to create always a different kind of exhibit. So every section is always different from the previous one, and this different style helps also the visitor to have always a different experience of M9. This is one of the first render we have for communicate M9. This render is made by Gris Dainese Studio, which was the architect who create the plan inside the 2 floors of the collection, because the collection is displayed in 2 floors, and Gris Dainese helps us to make all the 5 interactive studio work all together in a functional way. And then also very important was the graphic studio, Camuffo Lab, from Venice. We asked to Camuffo to create these big figures you see in the slides. This character are very pop and create a sort of fil rouge of communication inside all the 2 floors, all the collection, among all the exhibit we have. So the graphic, it's important to create connection among section and exhibits. We always start from from simple question. For example, the first one explained here is why the Italian population almost tripled since unification. So that we speak about the demographic dynamics, and we get attention from the visitors with this simple and direct question. This also is one of the 3rd level of communication you have inside M9. So the more simple and infographic way of communication. Then you have different kind, the narrative levels and also the emotional level in the biggest exhibit. So speaking about the exhibits, Michelangelo helped me explain this part.
Yes, we realized more than 60 exhibits in the museum. So obviously we can't show you all of them, but we would like to point out some of the principles, trying to retrace all the paths between the first idea and their final look that you can appreciate when the museum will be open again. So this is the first one we want to show you. It's in the section 1, demography and social structures. In our design brief, we want to point out as the aim of the section to present 3 big group portraits that can show at a glance the changes in Italian population during 3 different phases of the century. We asked the studio to use archive photographies modified with the 3D effects. So in the picture, you can see the very first rendering that we made inside our team. So this is just an idea, a suggestion that we gave to the Multimedia and Interaction Design Studios when we gave to them our brief. This is the first design idea from the studio Carmachina, who won the contest, the challenge for this section, to realize this section. That was evolved with the Grisdenese studio in this circular situation, in this
sort of arena.
Yes. And then it was finished with After Effects and Photoshop. So every single figures in these big pictures are animated with very little effects.
And it's important to say that all the figures you see here comes from historical pictures. So we research the materials inside the Italian archives. The studio received from us the pictures, and then they cut the figure and then put inside the big picture.
This is the look of the exhibit now. So you can appreciate this huge work of finding images in more than 100 archives and libraries. And so the visitor is really involved in this ambient. Then this came from section 4, that is dedicated to economy and production. So from our brief, the idea was to show how Italy was transformed into an industrial country throughout the intervention of the state and the public industries. So we asked the studio to show 3 different companies that represent 3 phases of Italian industrialization, and at the same time to make visitor challenging with the true factory experience. So we want from them to use immersive environment and then video games. But we want to challenge our studio to realize this kind of video games that are really similar to
the real process.
Yes, but it's they have an outlook really similar to the commercial game, like for Xbox or for PlayStation, but they are based on historical content and historical material. So we recreate these factories using the archives from the factories themselves. This was one of the project from one of the studios that participate to realize these ideas. So I want to show you some different options, also some options that we didn't realize at the end. Just to let you understand how many can be the different hypotheses in this work to transform a book into a museum. So this was the first idea from Clonework, by Clonework, that is the studio that won the competition. This is the development of the project. It's a work in progress, as you can see.
Again, different steps of rendering.
So all the section is organized with this workstation where you have to simulate some process in the industrial working line. So in this case, we are simulating the working line of an automotive factory, the Fiat, during the 80s.
So like a real worker, you have to work on the line, the chain line.
Probably in this video you can see, okay, this is what I want to show you. This is the main part of realizing and designing the video games. So on the left you can see the work on this software Unity to arrive to the final outlook of the game. And this is how it looks now, the museum. As we are close, we have to show you the videos, but we hope it's clear.
Always in our exhibit, even the one with gamification inside, you always have some real archive materials which before gaming explain about the idea of the fabrics, the idea of working in a big industry of the 20th century. So we mixed always different kind of source in order to get maybe attention from the youngest visitors with the gamification, but we try to pass to them also some historical content before the game.
This is from section 2, that is lifestyle, consumption and habits. We want to use the changes in our kitchen as a metaphor to explain how has changed society, nutrition, everyday life, and gender roles. So we started from this idea of creating huge out-of-scale kitchens, following the inspiration of a famous Italian yogurt advertisement from some years ago that you can see in this picture. Then we thought on video mapping on a room to show how life would be without the commodities we are used to, such as answering questions like how would it be to make coffee without gas fire or electricity in our household. So finally, we asked our studios to recreate 5 rooms. At the end, we create 4 for budget reason, because when you are trying to develop a huge problem like a huge project like this, you have also to consider your budget really with a lot of attention. So we use immersive videos, interactive tables, and really a lot of archival materials. This was one of the projects that we didn't realize. It was about video mapping. This is another project to realize this huge interactive wall to recreate the different periods. And then this, oh, I'm sorry. This is the look.
Salve, io mi chiamo Anita, ho 19 anni e sono nata in una fattoria fuori Brescia, ma lavoro a Milano. Faccio la domestica.
Okay, this is the look that we have now in our museum. This video is circular, so it recreates a room in 360 degrees. And it's realized in computer graphics. This studio that is NemaFX, it's famous in Italy for realizing
Video effects
visual
for
effects.
cinema.
Yeah, of course, visual effects for cinema. So we redraw all the aspects of this kitchen by collecting a lot of material.
These are all the reference used to create the 3D graphic.
Yes, we have more than 2,000 images for each of these kitchens. So really a huge work.
So from an historical point of view, it's very accurate and scientific.
And this is a final look of one of the kitchen. This is the kitchen of the 13th. Okay. It's the kitchen from the 30s, and you can also interact this ambience with the Oculus devices. So you can, like a quest game, you can enter this kitchen and interact and explore and open the doors, the drawers, and interact with food and hardware in this kind of
360 scenario.
The last that we want to show you is section 8, stereotypes and self-images. This is not our museum, but is a Cleveland Museum. We use this exhibit as a reference because we really love this kind of collection wall in which many visitors can interact
at the same time.
At the same time, yes. So we ask our studio to realize a huge interactive video wall. In the brief, we asked the studio to let people explore stereotypes, prejudice, and self-representations of Italian people about themselves and foreigners about us.
So how Italians told about themselves during the 20th century, and now foreigners generally speaks about Italian culture, Italian ways of living, and everything related with stereotypes.
This is the render that ... who won and realized the final version of the exhibits proposed us, and we really like this kind of visual idea that we gave us. The idea was to realize some huge, big moving portraits. Now the video is going on, and we will this kind of portraits because we thought that they represent perfectly our idea of a collective self-portrait in a mirror, and so we decided to go ahead with this idea. I don't know if you want to explain something
for
more
example,
about
this feature of downloading the content at the end of the process was impossible to have for many reasons, privacy and owning about the archives material, so the copyright materials rules.
This is how it looks nowadays. So you can see some of our girls interacting.
About this video, well, it's interesting to say this is not touch screen. You just need to point the content area inside the wall, and all the pictures and all the text will appear magically.
And the very, very last thing that I want to show you is a really huge in dimensional aspect exhibits that is in the section 6, state politics and institutions. So we wanted to immerse people in the experience of being in a mass demonstration during the 20th century, participating to some of the more important political events of our collective history. So we asked the studios to realize a huge immersive scenario of a square in which listening to some of the most prominent leaders of our history.
We use the square as a metaphor to let know people how they experience, how Italians experience politics, know about politics, have a sort of alphabetization about the politics in the 20th century.
And then we asked them to use the hologram technique in order to recreate the figure of the leaders, to bring back to life. In this video, you can see the first rendering model of the exhibit that Carmachina has realized, presented them in the contest. Then this is how it looks nowadays.
For doing this exhibit, we really used a lot of video footage, a lot of pictures. All the exhibit lasts 21 minutes, so it's a really huge exhibit for a museum installation, and it's a 360 arena. And so this is our way to explain about immersive exhibit. This is our M9 way to create an historical, entertaining exhibit.
Okay, maybe you can appreciate this aspect, this dimension of this exhibit.
Okay. So this is M9. We hope you enjoy our presentation. Of course, M9 needs to be visited to be appreciated in a correct way. Speaking about something digital is not so easy in a 2D presentation, but we hopefully will be open before the end of this year. So everyone are invited to come in 2021 to.
And meanwhile, you can write us at info@m9museum.it, so we can answer all the questions you can have about our designing process or
everything else. So
so
thanks for listening and inviting us to this big conference. Thank you.